Just going to give folks about another 30 seconds here to get logged in, and we'll get started with our Friday afternoon lunch and learn Microsoft Access Intermediate. Looks like it is 101, so we'll go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Do Space Lunch and Learn. This afternoon, we're going to be taking a little bit of a deeper look into Microsoft Access. I do have the chat and the Q&A open on another monitor over here, so I will keep my eye on that. If you have any questions or you want me to repeat something, just let me know, and I can do that. Otherwise, at the end of the session, I will also have a period of time for you to ask any questions that you may have. So here's our agenda for today. We're just going to look at getting started with databases. I just wanted to do a real brief overview of the first class, not take a whole lot of time, but just give you a little bit of an update. And then we're going to look at modifying existing tables. We're going to take a look at queries and advanced queries. We're also going to look at creating forms, form designs, and creating macros within Microsoft Access. And I actually did add one thing to the agenda. I thought that I had put it on here, but evidently didn't. I also want to show you how to import and export information from Access to Excel and vice versa. So we will look at that as well. So just talking about what exactly is a database. In the olden days, we had card catalogs, or every once in a while there is a phone book that shows up on my front porch again, which I never use, but they do supply us with them. They're very thin now because in the lower picture, we have everything in our phone. So everything within that phone, all of our contacts, all of our photos, all of the videos that we've created by mistake, or at least me anyway, those are all different examples of databases. And a lot of times when I start talking about Access or any database for that mention, I always say to people, have you used a database today? And they look at me and they say, no, I haven't used a database today. And I said, well, have you sent a text message? Have you made a phone call? Have you Googled anything? Because if you have, you've used a database, whether you're aware of that or not. So databases really allow users to enter Access and really analyze information very quickly and easily. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So the real basic parts of components of a database, it breaks down in three different levels. So you have each one of your fields, and those fields might be brand, product, category, aisle, price, and so on. And each one of these are records. So you have a record for Watson's, you have a records for Lewis, you have a record for Hobus. And then all of those records are saved within one file. So there's really three aspects of a database and much more, because we're going to go into reports and forms and queries and some things like that that I said earlier. But when you break databases down into smaller bite-sized pieces, that's really what the bulk of a database is, because that's what you have to start with. You have to start from the very beginning and broaden your horizons. I know a friend of mine is keeping all of her data. She has her own business, and she keeps all of her data in an Excel spreadsheet, but she wants to be able to say, okay, from this spreadsheet, I need it to pull information, from this spreadsheet. So she's got multiple spreadsheets. And I said, really, all you need to do is import all of that information into Access, and then you can create queries. You can create those relationships that will allow you to be able to pull information a lot faster about your customer database and assist you with being a better business owner. As a lot of people say, think or work smarter, not harder. Couldn't think of that for a second. It is Friday afternoon though, right? If you haven't noticed, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, but we should be okay. So just looking at that, those are some things that we're going to go over. Um, I have three tables that I already set up for today's lunch and learn. So we have one called condos, and those are we're just renting out condos to people. We have a table for all of the customers that have rented our condos, and we have a table for who owns those condos. So as we're looking through these, now I have all three of them open. You can see that at the top. I have condos open. I have customers open, and I have the owner data open. And as you look through here, there's some consistencies among these tables. So I'm going to start with owner code. Owner code is on each one of these tables, helping us to create a relationship between them. So here is owner code so that we know what customers have rented what unit and what from what owner. We also have a list of all of our all of our condos, and those also have an owner code. So looking at each one of these tables, going back to my visual with the, let me go ahead and close some of these up. There we go. Going back to my visual where we have fields inside of records, and all of those records are in one file. All of this information, although I have three tables here, and we'll have a lot more information before the end of this webinar, but all of this saves into one file. And the one thing that you may remember from our last webinar, or if you've used Acces at all, is that Acces does not let you make another move until you've saved something. It's constantly asking you, do you want to save this? Do you need to update this? Do you really want to delete this? So it's very precautious on the side of the end user. So it's hard to lose something in Acces. And once you get used to utilizing the software, you're well on your way. It's so has so many different features to it that I mean, I don't even know what all these features do, and I'll show you some examples of that as we go through our webinar today. But that's another one of the reasons that I like doing these types of things, these professional development for the community, so to speak, is because every time I do a webinar or teach a class or do some volunteer work, I always end up learning something myself. So, you know, you've proven that you're lifelong learners because you're in here this afternoon with me on a fairly nice Friday afternoon. So that's always nice to pull more information away. And that's another reason that I like to encourage people to ask me questions or send me emails. I don't believe my PowerPoint had my email address on there, but I will definitely share that with you before the end of the webinar. So looking at these tables, let's just take a gander at how these were built. So at the top, you can see I have all of my fields: owner code, last name, first name, street, city, state, postal code, telephone, website, and so on. On my home ribbon, all the way over here on the left-hand side, if I go to view, I have two different views. I have my datasheet view, which is what I'm in, and I have my design view. So if I go over to my design view, I can add additional fields in here if I would like to. So underneath the owner code right now, I have first name, last name, telephone. You know, maybe I want to, underneath telephone, I want to specify. So I'm just going to select my very last field, which is website. And I'm going to hover my mouse over that. I'm going to do a right click, and I'm going to tell it to insert the rows. And when I tell it to insert the rows, maybe I want to change this to cell phone. And maybe down here we have business phone. So you can go in and change your fields around. After you've entered the fields, I can come over here and I've got all kinds of different data types that you can input. Typically, I just use short text, but you know, if you've got a website that you want to put in, you can put in a hyperlink. And some of our other tables have yes, nos. They have OELs, and we'll take a look at some of those here. Date and time, definitely I've used. We're using currency. Auto number is also a very popular one. So I went ahead and I inserted this field. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to save this because if I don't, and I go back, try to flip from my design view to my data sheet view, it will say, hey, Julie, do you want to save this before continuing? One more thing that I want to point out is the primary key. The primary key is very important so that you can't have duplicate records. It's kind of like a social security number or a driver's license number. There's, you know, one in the United States only, and that's your unique, your primary key. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to my data sheet view. And you can see now that I have the ability to input business phone number. So that's just a real easy way to add another field in. You can see that the label phone is being cut off a little bit. So I'm just going to hover my mouse in between business phone and website. I can pull this out to increase that column width, or I can pull it in to decrease the column width. So kind of like Excel, if you're familiar with Excel, works the same way with increasing and decreasing the column width and the row height. Okay, so I'm not going to go through anymore with the fields. The next thing that I'd like to do is jump over here to the Create ribbon, and that's where we're going to spend a lot of time today. So underneath the Create ribbon, the first thing I want to look at is queries, and like my agenda said, we're going to go through just some real basic queries, and then we're going to look at some more advanced queries. So let me pop back over here. So underneath the Create ribbon, we have two ways to create queries. We have a query wizard and we have a query design. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to click on query design. Quite frankly, that's my preference in creating queries. And when I do that, over here on the right-hand side, it says, okay, what tables do you want to use? So you can see that over here on the left-hand side, I have my 3 tables. And when I said that I wanted to create a query, it also said, okay, here's your 3 tables that are available at this point in time. Which ones do you want to pull information from? So I'm just going to go ahead and maybe, like I said, we're going to start off with some real basic queries. If I double click on condos, you can see that it inserted a box over here to the left, and I can increase or decrease the length of that box by hovering my mouse over the bottom and pulling up or down. Or I do have an elevator chute here, so if you prefer not to do that, you can scroll up and down. I like to pull them out. So let's say that I wanted to create a query, and a query is just asking a question about how many of the units. So if I want to insert the unit number, if I just double click on unit number, you can see that it puts it down below. So I can either double click on the fields that I want access to pull information from, or if I click down at the bottom and down the down arrow, I can select whichever field I want. So let's just say that I want the units, and I want to know the number of units that have pools. So I'm just asking a real simple question right here. It tells me what table it's gathering that data from. When we look at some more complex queries, we'll add in more than one table at a time, and we'll have the ability to select from either condos or customers or owner data. So once you're done with your query, then I'm going to come up, note that I now have a design ribbon. Now I'm going to come up and I'm going to tell it that I want to run that. So it just ran that, and it gives me my unit numbers and the ones that have a pool. And the ones that have a pool have a check mark in them. So now if I want to save this query, I can just come up and click on my little universal disk to save. And it says, okay, what do you want to call this particular query? And I'm just going to say maybe condos with pools. So perhaps this is a question that's asked quite frequently of you, looking at the few condos that I currently have. You could very easily memorize that 102, 104, 107, 110 all have pools. However, more than likely you could have hundreds or thousands of condos, and you want to pull that information. So we'll go ahead and we'll just save that, and you see what happens over here on the left hand side. I now have tables and I have queries. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close this query. I already have it saved, so it's not going to give me any trouble there. I can close this table too. See what I mean? It's going to ask you, do you want to save this? And the reason that it asked me that was because I increased the column with a business phone. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes. I'm going to pop back over here to create, and we're going to create another query. So let's move over to customers. I'm just going to go ahead and double click on that, and we'll look at the fields that are available for our customers. And again, we can put as many fields in as we want to. So maybe with my customers, I just want to create a query, which then I can create reports and forms with. Let's say that I want last name, first name, their address, their city, their state, and their zip. So that's all the information that I want out of here. I don't need their ID. I don't need the days that they last stayed in one of the condos, or which unit they stayed in. If they want mailers, I simply want to create the ability to do a mass mailing from Acces, and I can do that by creating this query and then exporting it to Excel, or creating my mailers from there. So once I've got that, I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to click on Run, and it gives me just that information. So again, I'm going to come up here and click on Save, and this time I'm just going to say mailing addresses. And we'll click on OK. As soon as I do that, now we have two queries that are sitting over here. Okay, so potential question, and a question that I get asked quite a bit is, let's say that I come back up to my customers. If I come back up to my customers and I add another customer, so I have a brand new customer that is renting from me, and we'll just make up a random name here. Put in that information. Okay, and then they have rented something for the week of Thanksgiving. So we'll just say that they're going to stay for 5 days. They wanted unit 108, And the owner code for that is GH55. Do they want mailers? Yes, and weekly. Okay, so now I've added somebody to my tables. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save that. I'm going to come back down to my mailing addresses. And let's just look at that. Now you'll note that my person that I just added, my new customer that I just added, Mary Carpenter, isn't in my mailing addresses. And you're probably asking yourself, does that mean that I have to run that query all over again? The answer is absolutely not. Underneath records, all I need to do is click on refresh all, and there is my new client. So you just need to remember to refresh all, because if you're moving from tables to queries to forms to reports, it doesn't always update by itself. So you want to make sure that you are refreshing your information as you're adding to your database. Okay, so now we have two different queries. And let's go ahead, go back to create, and I'm going to go back to query design. Oops. Create and go ahead and close these. Okay, now you see what's happening to me here is that because I have mailing addresses selected, when I clicked on create and query design, it's giving me all of my queries. So it automatically defaulted to that. If I want to go back to my tables, I can just click over here on tables. So I have four different availabilities here. I have tables, I have links, I have my queries, and I have all. So you can go ahead and look at that. So the only one that we haven't used yet is the owner data. And again, maybe I just want to create a mailer for that. So I'm just going to go in real quickly and create a mailer for just my property owners. Click on run, gives me all of that information. When I click on save, it says, okay, what do you want to save query to as? And I'm going to say, oops, there we go. So now I have three different queries down here. Okay, so that's just a brief overview on queries, but let's look at some more complex queries. So when I come over here to create, and I tell it that I want to go into the query design, let's say that I want to pull specific people from my customers. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab my customers here. And you can see that I have all of these different fields. For instance, maybe I want state, zip. Maybe I want to tell this that underneath criteria, you can do quite a bit. So underneath criteria, I'm going to put in here, I can put not in, and in parentheses and quotes. Maybe I want to, look for a population outside of Omaha, because Omaha is renting a lot of my cabins. But I'm trying to get people from outside of the state or from other regions, from the Omaha area that I want to send a mailer to. Now, I believe I only have one person in there that's not from Omaha, but that's how you would do that, not in Omaha. So now when I click on run, you can see, okay, it's giving me two people. I have Don Smith that lives in Ashland, and I have Mary Carpenter from Central City. So when I go to save that, I can just say not in Omaha. So I have all of that information. And again, if I came back up here to customers and I added another customer that was outside of the Omaha area, I would just need to refresh my mailers were not in Omaha, and it would update that. So let me go ahead and close up some of this, and let's look at some other information. So if I go back to create and to my query design, back to tables, I'm going to go over to customers and show you a couple of other examples of what you can do. So I remember I put phone numbers in here. Customers, where are they? Address, city, state, rental date. This isn't. Okay. That is in, must be an owner data. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to create my query. Now I do need to go back to my owner data just for a second because I want to look at my cell phone numbers. Okay, so we've got 402, 906, and 319. Now I can go back to my query. Note that I've got them both right here. I didn't close anything up, so I've got that sitting right here, and I can go ahead and select the data that I want, and postal code, and maybe my cell phone. And now underneath the criteria, I'm going to put in like, and I'm going to use my same criteria. This time I'm going to put in that I want everyone from the 319 area code. Now you'll note that after 319, I'm going to put a star in. And that means that just the first 3 digits are a match, and then it can be any numbers after that. So that's that star, and that comes in really handy. So that I'm going to close my quotes and close my parentheses. I can go ahead and run that. So I'm going to come back over to design. I'm going to click on run. And it looks like I have one person from the 319 area code. So I can go ahead and just, that's an easy one. I can just name it 319. And now we have some additional queries. All right, let's look at pulling data from more than one of these tables. So let's go ahead and click on create. And we're going to go back into query design. And this time I'm going to pull up 2 different tables in my working area. So maybe I want the condos, and I want the customers. Now I can double click or I can drag and drop that, whichever way you want. Note that when I pull these out, Acces automatically says, okay, we have a unique field in both condos and customers, and that's the unit number. So it automatically makes that association. So if I want to, I can go through. Let's say that the owners of the condos have requested data on who has rented their particular condos. So I can go through and I can tell it that I want last name, first name, and maybe they want to look at, the number of bedrooms that they're looking at, or the number of bathrooms that they're looking at. Are they looking at pools? Is there a unit number that they like more than another one? We're all creatures of habit. If you go someplace and you like that particular house, or you like that particular condo or room, whatever the case may be, you may ask for that same room again. So all of that is kept in databases. So now you can see that down below, I have 2 fields from my customers table, and I have 4 fields from my condos. So now when I click on run, it gives me that information from the 2, knowing that I have that information. So we've got Carpenter, Downey, Hurt, Metz. Now, somebody asked me, what happens if you go to customers, I'm going to go up to customers, and let's say, for instance, Luann Basement. Luann Basement booked another reservation, but she didn't want that particular unit number, and which would sometimes change the owner code as well. So to make this a little bit easier, so you don't have to watch me type everything in, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select Luann Basement, and I'm going to right click, and I'm just going to copy that. And then I'm going to come down here to where it says new, and I can either do a Control V to paste. So let me go ahead and select that, Control V to paste. You can see that my unique ID adds number 11. And then I can come over here and I can say, okay, this isn't the same date, so we'll want to modify that a little bit. Maybe she wants to rent something in December for 4 days. She doesn't want condo 103, but she wants condo, we'll go with 102, and the owner code is AB17. So now when I save this and I go back down to, when I go back down to what was I using? I can't remember. That's owners. Oh, over here, customers. When I go back to customers and I refresh, now it's got Luann Basement in there twice. So Luann is in there twice because she has rented not only 103 but 102 from owner GH55 and from owner AB117. So those are a bunch of different queries, and you can see that when you're putting together these queries and you have mass amounts of data, that you really want to think this through as to what your end goals are. How do you want to use Acces so that it's helping your business? So I'm just kind of showing you some examples, and hopefully you're doing some brainstorming on your end to think about how you might want to use this for your particular business. So here are all of my customers. I want to do one more query. I want to show you one more query. So I'm going to come over here to create and to query design. And I'm going to go ahead and go back to my tables, and I'm going to grab my customers. So let's say that I'm just going to drop all that stuff in zip, but let's say underneath zip that I want the criteria to be only people in the 68113 zip code. So I have my zip code here, and I'm just putting in there that I want just those people. So now when I click on run, it gives me just the people from 68113. So there's a lot of different little, I'm going to call them quirky things that you need to know about Acces. It used to be that in some of the older versions, you would just put in equal, or you could put in 68 and the star. So it gave you, 68046, 68117. If you just wanted everybody in the 68 zip code, you can certainly do that. So we put together 6 different queries showing you how to just pull the people with have a 319 cell phone or area code, I should say, people that just live in the 68113 zip, the condos with pools, just mailing addresses for the customers and the owners, and people that do not live in Omaha that have rented from us. So you can see where all of this information could be very valuable to you. We'll go ahead and save that. We'll tell them we don't need that one. We'll just say no. Excuse me. Okay, So that's a little bit about queries and some of the expanded queries. So if I want to take this information, let's jump over to external data for just a second. Let's say that I have information in Excel that I want to pull into a table, or if I want to take a table or a query and export it to Excel. It's very easy to do. I just went from the Create ribbon right next door to the external data. And I'm going to go to New Data from File, and I'm just going to say Excel. You can see that it doesn't have to be in the Excel format. There's multiple other formats, HTML, XML, text files. So it doesn't just work within Microsoft Office. It does talk to other software packages as well. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it that I want to go to Excel, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Browse. And I've got a couple of different files here that I created for today's webinar. And I have an address book example. I'll go ahead and double click on that. Once I've selected that, you have some options here, and I want to import the source data into a new table so that it will be placed in this particular database. And I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. It asks me a few more questions. It just wants to make sure that everything looks good on my end. So here are the different fields and the way it has it separated out. I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. And what I want to do is I want those first row contains column headings. So I'm going to click on that. See how that changes? If I go ahead and click on that again, it puts it down as if it's part of the data. But if I click on the first row contains the column headings, I can go ahead and click on Next, click on Next. And I want Acces to add a primary key for me. Go ahead and click on Next, and it wants to know, what do you want me to call this? I'm just going to call this my import, and we'll click on Finish. I don't need to save those steps. And now I have all of that information that did reside, and it still resides in an Excel spreadsheet, but now it's in my Acces database. Now, if I want to go the opposite direction, let's go ahead and select my condos. So let's say I want to take the information that's in my condos and I want to export it. So, you've got two groupings underneath external data. You have import and link, and you have export. So when I click on Excel, I want it to export to Excel. I'm just going to tell it to export data with the formatting and layout that it currently has. I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. I don't need to save those steps. Now, when I go back to my desktop and into my folder Acces Pics, if I'm in here someplace, I should have, here it is right here, my condos. So if I double click on that, whoops, it flipped it over here to another monitor. But you can see what this looks like. And it doesn't recognize the yes, no, or the boxes for the pools. So it just puts a true false in there. Doesn't hurt anything. But you can export all of this information very easily to Excel, or you can import from Excel. So don't think that you have to reinvent the wheel because the two work together very, very well. Okay, so that is looking at your external data. I'm going to come back over here to create. And I'm going to close this up for a second. If I have condos selected, I can come in and I can tell it just to create a form. Or which is very, very nice. But let's go to another one. No, I don't want to save that. I want to go to, did that have that? I'm going to go to customers. So I'm going to go ahead and select customers. I did not need to open it. And I'm going to go to create, and I'm going to tell it that I want to go to form. So you've got all these different controls. And if you hover your mouse over it, it allows you to insert a lot of information, very similar. Some of it is very similar to going to I'm on design. Let me see. To some of it's very similar to going to view and flipping between data sheet view and design view, but not all of it. So if I go ahead and click on my customers, let me go ahead and close this so it's easier for you to follow. Yes, we'll save. No, that's what I was working on. So we'll just look at that. If I go back over here to my design ribbon, let's say that I want to change mailers. Right now, I was manually typing in yes, no, yes, weekly, whatever the case may be. But let's say that I want to change that. I have the ability to put in a combo box here. So if I want to replace this, I can grab this combo box underneath controls. Come here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I was just being impatient with it. So let me go back to the other view that I was on, and if I go back to design and grab my combo box, and actually I was trying to drag and drop it. If I click on it and then come down here and click inside, it will populate this combo box wizard for me. So I'm just going to say that I will type the values in that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and click on next. And this is, okay, what would you like in here? And I can just say yes, no, maybe yes, and weekly, or yes, monthly, and so on. Whatever you need in there, you can put in, and you can have as many options as you want. So I'm going to go ahead and click on next. You can have it remember the values for later, but I'm just going to have it store only those values within my mailers field. So I'm just going to tell it to remember those within this field because that's where I want to use them. I'm going to go ahead and click on next. It says, okay, what do you want to call your combo box? And I'm going to call that mailers. We'll go ahead and click on finish, and you can see that I've got some stuff doubled up here. So now I just need to go in and edit this a little bit, fix it up a tad bit. So while I'm still in my layout view, I'm just going to go ahead and select this box, and you can tell that I have it selected because it turns yellow. I'm going to hit the delete key. And then we don't need this other mailers box, so I'll hit the delete key. Now I can just grab my combo box and I can drag it over. We'll go ahead and save that. And this is going to be our customers form. So I'll go ahead and click on OK. Now I've got 3 different categories. I've created tables, I've created queries, and I've created forms. So if I go from my layout view to my form view, now when I click on the down arrow, I can simply select that rather than manually typing it in. So from the create and in the form, you have a lot of different options. The other thing that let's take a look at is maybe just the owner data. So let me go ahead and select the owner data, and I'm going to go into form design this time. And you can see that it gives me just a blank grid here to work with. And what I want to do is I want to come over here and I want to tell it that I want to add existing fields, and it says, what fields do you want it from? I can take it just from condos, or create um, I can create a form that pulls from all of these. So again, pretty user friendly once you've been using it. So maybe I want to put last name, first name, address, city, state, and zip in there. So I just did a real quick drag and drop. I wasn't being real careful about, where I was putting them, but I am going to go in and fix this up a little bit now. So I'm just going to pull over first name, because this is going to be how your form is going to look. And you kind of need to fix that up a little bit. Quite frankly, this isn't my favorite way of creating a form. I think there's easier ways to do it. But this does allow you to select different fields from different tables if you want to. If you want to see what this looks like, I can go back to my form view and you can see that it's kind of a mess right now. But then you can go back to your layout view, or excuse me, your layout view if you want to. You can do that and move these around a little bit so that it's easier to see. So that's another way of creating a form. We're not going to save that one. Let's go ahead and go to back to condos and to create. And I just want to go back into forms. So here I've got a pretty nice looking form, but we do have the ability, like I said, to change the controls on it. Maybe I want to add a logo. Maybe I want there to be a little picture right here. So I can click on logo. I downloaded a picture of condos earlier, so we'll go ahead and grab that. So now I've got a picture of some condos within my condos table. Now, if you want to insert another image, you can go ahead and insert another image. It will insert behind each one of the records. Not something that I typically do. I have seen people that will, you have to look at the pixels of the image to see how big it's going to be. So there are my condos. But if I want to come over here to format, let's say that I want to jazz it up a little bit more, I can come in here and I can say, okay, I want this to be, whoops, I didn't select the whole thing. How I selected the whole thing, let me go ahead and undo that for a second. I selected the entire record by coming up in the upper left-hand corner and selecting the arrows, and it will select everything at once. So now, if I want to do a shape fill, I can come in here and I can tell it that I want it to be, maybe blue, and I want my text to be white. I can increase my font size. So you can go in and you can jazz it up as much as you want to. Okay. So that's just a little bit about your forms. Your reports work very, very similar fashion. Yeah, let's go ahead and save that. We'll call it condos. That's fine. So now we've got another form. So if I go to, we'll just go to my import and over to report. Much of what I just talked about with forms also will apply to your reports. So when I click on reports, it gives me this information that I imported. And again, if I want to print this, there's some work that I personally would want to do to this. So when I clicked on report, it now gives me 4 new ribbons. I've got design, I have arrange, I have format, and I have page setup. So if I want to print this information, maybe I want it to be in landscape because a little bit more is going to fit on each one of these fields. And let's say that, we've got an awful lot of room in here for first name, last name. There's big gaps in there that I don't need. That'll be taking up paper. So my goal is to see if we can get this all on one sheet of paper. Right now, it looks like it's on 2 sheets of paper, but let's see if we can get it on one. You can see that when I select any one of the fields, ID, first name, last name, it selects the entire list. So if I click on ID and then I hover my mouse in between the 2 fields, I get an arrow to the east and the west, and I can pull this in, right? And I can reduce the column width of each one of those fields so that I can manipulate this down to only being on one page. So with your reports, if this is something that you need to send to somebody or that you need to share with somebody, you can clean these up so that they're looking a little bit snazzier, or so that they're all on one page. And now if I were to go to File and Print and Print Preview, you can see that it says, okay, this is what it's going to look like in your print preview. If you're ready to print, go ahead and print. If you just wanted to see what it would look like on one page, you can just click on Close Print Preview, and it will flip you back out to your report. Now, if I go to save this, it's going to say, okay, what do you want your report name to be? And I'm just going to say my address book import. Go ahead and click on OK. And now I have tables, I have queries, I have forms, and I have a report. Okay, so let's go back over to Create for a second. I did want to, I don't know if I showed you the wizard, but let's just take a quick look at the wizard, and then we're going to look at macros. So when I was doing the queries and the forms and the reports, I was doing some of them manually, but you do have wizards built into each one of these. So if I take my owner data and I want to create a report out of that, I can use my report wizard. And what that asks me is, okay, which one of these fields do you want? Do you want all of them? Boom, just click on the double arrow and we'll put them all in the report. If you decide you don't want all of them, I can take them away one at a time, or I can take them away all at one time, whatever the case may be. So if I want maybe first name, I can select the field and I can click on the arrow, or I can just double click and it'll take that information over for me. And we'll go ahead and click on next. And it says, do you want any to add any level of groupings? And we're not going to do that right now. So I'll go ahead and click on OK. We can have it sorting, but we probably want it sorting by last name and ascending. So we'll go ahead and click on next. There are 3 different layouts. You have column, tabular, and justified. And you have, again, portrait and landscape. So I'm just going to do tabular, and let's see what that looks like. And we'll go ahead and finish that. And there's my nice looking report that the report wizard created for me automatically. So the report wizards, the form wizards, they're very nice because they make you can do things very quickly without having to really think a lot about or know a lot about Acces once you have your information in there. And again, this is just a different view. That's one thing to keep in mind is that some of these have 2 views, some of them have 4 views. And if you come back and you say, oh no, what on earth did I do? Think about views. Always think about views and what it's looking like. You can see that it automatically puts the date and the time in there. Note that does come from your PC. So if no, I shouldn't say the time, I looked at the time, but it does give today's date. If the date on your PC is wrong, the date on your report is going to be wrong. Okay, it looks like we've got just a few minutes left. So I'm going to go back to create, and I'm going to come over to macro and code. And underneath macro, you can go in and you can select from any one of these events. And let me back up for a second, talk a little bit about what a macro is. So you can build a macro in most of the Microsoft Office applications and many more. It's just a shortcut for you. If there's something that you want Access to do, maybe when you open a report. So let's go down here to open report. And when I do that, then I have other questions to answer. It says, okay, which report are you referring to? So on my open report, we'll just do my address book and import. Which view do I want it in? I want it in my report view, but again, here are all of those different views for you to select from. So we'll just go into the report view, and we don't need to filter anything out. Let's see. The condition can be normal. Let's go ahead and save that. And I'm just going to call this macro 1, and we'll close this up. We'll close this up. And when I click on my macro, it automatically gives me that report. Now there's different levels to this. So you can have it open a table, a query, a form, a report, whatever you want. And it can be, some of them will ask you, do you want it to be in the edit mode? Do you want it to be in the view mode only? You can have different layers of it. Once it's opened the report, what do you want it to do? Do you want it to automatically start adding another record? Do you want it to open it so that phone number is in the edit mode? It just depends on how you might use this. So when you're thinking about a macro, you want to think about something that you perform maybe on a daily basis. And by creating a macro in any one of these applications, it's going to save you a lot of time. I don't use macros a whole lot in Access, but I do in Excel, and they're a huge time saver. All right, folks, it looks like we have about 1 minute left, so I apologize. I didn't give you a lot of time. Let me go ahead and pull back up my PowerPoint here. I want to give you my email address. If you do have any questions at any point in time, or you run into a problem, I have no issues with you emailing me. So here is my email address. And I'll make this a little bit smaller so it's easier for you to see. There you go. And I can also maybe make this a little bit easier on you. Oh, yeah, thank you. I was just going to put it in the chat, and I saw that you, oops, but there we go. So any questions, folks? I know it's a lot to think about. Access is a big monster with a lot of different turning parts. So if you do think of anything, just let me know. Thank you for joining me today. Have a great weekend and a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll look forward to seeing you in some webinars in the near future.